Hello, everyone. Now, as you know, Michael Jordan fans are the worst sports fans of all time. And one of the many reasons why is because these people love to go by NBA rings. Out of all the sports fans in the history of mankind, no other group of sports fans goes by rings more than Michael Jordan fans. It's gotten so bad that they even influence other NBA fans to go by rings. It's gotten so bad that they're even influencing other people in other sports to go by rings. Anyway, let me set this up for you. They'll say things like, hey, all I need to do is go by rings. They'll say things like, well, at the end of the day, the statistics don't matter if you don't win a ring. Or, well, at the end of the day, the statistics don't matter if you don't have more than one ring. They'll say things like, how can that guy be the greatest NBA player of all time? He doesn't have a ring. If a player wins a ring, they give him credit. If a player doesn't win a ring, they blame him. They'll say things like, this guy is better than that guy because he has one more ring. Or, this guy is better than that guy because he has more rings. They'll say things like, this guy is the best player of all time because he has the most rings. Or this guy is the second best player of all time because he has the second most rings. Or this guy is the third best player of all time because he has the third most rings, and so on. They'll say things like, when I try to figure out who's the best player of all time, I go by a combination of things. And one of the things I go by is rings. And they'll introduce people as an NBA champion. And they'll say things like, here's NBA champion such and such. Or here's 14-time champion such and such. And they'll call people failures for not winning a ring. And they don't just do this with players. They'll do this with coaches. They'll do this with general managers. They'll do this with owners. And there's more examples, but you get the point. And the players have been brainwashed too. They'll brag about their rings. Or they'll say things like, hey, I know more than you because I have one more ring than you. Or, hey, I know more than you because I have more rings than you. They'll say things like, I know what it takes to win a ring. Or, I know what it takes to win more than one ring. And if a player is disagreeing with another player, they'll say things like, hey, I'm right and you're wrong because I have one more ring than you. Or, hey, I'm right and you're wrong because I have more rings than you. At the end of the day, these people love rings, except of course when it goes against Michael Jordan. Then it's different. And we'll get into that later. Anyway, I'm going to explain to you why all this is ridiculous. Here are the reasons why, in no particular order. When Michael Jordan fans use rings to rank NBA Hall of Famers, they are disrespecting NBA Hall of Famers. Next, when Michael Jordan fans use rings to rank NBA Hall of Famers, they are dismissing NBA Hall of Famers. Next, when Michael Jordan fans claim to respect the game and then they disrespect the NBA Hall of Famers, that is a contradiction. Next, when Michael Jordan fans claim to love the game and then they dismiss the NBA Hall of Famers, that is a contradiction. Next, understand why they're doing all these things. They're just trying to find a way to elevate Michael Jordan and to tear down anyone who they think is a threat to Michael Jordan. So all this should show you that they're not reliable. Next, they have a history of always trying to find a way to elevate Michael Jordan and to tear down anyone who they think is a threat to Michael Jordan. So all this should show you that they're not reliable. Next, how do Michael Jordan fans explain that most NBA Hall of Famers don't go by rings to rank NBA Hall of Famers? Next, how do Michael Jordan fans explain that most NBA legends don't go by rings to rank NBA Hall of Famers? Next, how do Michael Jordan fans explain that most NBA scouts don't go by rings to rank NBA Hall of Famers? Next, how do Michael Jordan fans explain that most NBA experts don't go by rings to rank NBA Hall of Famers? Next, how do Michael Jordan fans explain that most of the people that Michael Jordan played with don't go by rings to rank NBA Hall of Famers? Next, how do Michael Jordan fans explain that most of the players that Michael Jordan played against don't go by rings to rank NBA Hall of Famers? Next, how do Michael Jordan fans explain that most of the people who coached Michael Jordan don't go by rings to rank NBA Hall of Famers? Next, how do Michael Jordan fans explain that most people who worked in management on a team that Michael Jordan was on don't go by rings to rank NBA Hall of Famers? Next, how do Michael Jordan fans explain that most of the owners who owned a team that Michael Jordan was on don't use rings to rank NBA Hall of Famers. Next, how do Michael Jordan fans explain that Michael Jordan doesn't go by rings to rank NBA Hall of Famers? Next, Michael Jordan fans have a contradiction. If Michael Jordan didn't have 6 rings, they wouldn't do all the things that they do with rings. That is a contradiction. Next, Michael Jordan fans have a contradiction. If Michael Jordan didn't have 1 ring, they wouldn't go by the things that they go by when it comes to rings. That is a contradiction. Next, you need to understand that before Michael Jordan came in the NBA, most sports fans in general did not use rings to rank players. I'm not saying it never happened, I'm saying in general it didn't happen. Most sports fans didn't use rings to rank players. Most fans of an individual team sport didn't use rings to rank players. Most fans of a team sport didn't use rings to rank players. And this includes basketball fans. And most basketball fans didn't use rings to rank players. I want you to think about this. Before Michael Jordan was in the NBA, how many examples can you think of where a baseball fan was like, this baseball player is better than that baseball player because he has 1 or more rings? Another example, before Michael Jordan came in the NBA, how many examples can you think of where a soccer fan was like, this soccer player is better than that soccer player because he has 1 or more rings? Another example, before Michael Jordan came into the NBA, how many examples can you think of where a tennis fan was like, this tennis player is better than that tennis player because he has 1 or more rings? And there are more examples, but you get the point. So how do Michael Jordan fans explain that before Michael Jordan came in the NBA, in general, sports fans didn't use rings to rank players? So when did some sports fans start using rings to rank players? It started when Michael Jordan fans started using rings to rank Michael Jordan as the #1 NBA player of all time. And when did Michael Jordan fans start using rings to rank Michael Jordan as the #1 NBA player of all time? When Michael Jordan was in the NBA. When Michael Jordan won his first ring. You think that's a coincidence? How do Michael Jordan fans explain all this? Now, on a side note, Michael Jordan fans were trying to rank Michael Jordan as the #1 NBA player of all time before he even won his first ring. Anyway, Michael Jordan fans started using NBA rings to rank NBA players after Michael Jordan won his first NBA ring. And Michael Jordan fans started using NBA rings to rank Michael Jordan as the #1 NBA player of all time after he won his first NBA ring. Next. Now, some Michael Jordan fans might say, well, hey, what about the few people that did go by rings to rank players before Michael Jordan was in the NBA? Well, first, why are you not going by the majority? Second, why are you going by the minority? Third, you contradicted yourself because lots of you always like to go by the majority and not the minority. And fourth, just because some people use rings to rank players before Michael Jordan came in the NBA, it doesn't mean that they are right. Next, when people did go by rings to rank players before Michael Jordan came in the NBA, it was always because of 1 or more questionable reasons. For example, maybe they were in the media and they did it partly to write a story. Another example, maybe they had a bias for a player. Another example, maybe they were against another player. And there are more examples, but you get the point. Next, you also need to understand that Michael Jordan fans were calling Michael Jordan the #1 NBA player of all time when he had 6 rings, when he had 5 rings, when he had 4 rings, when he had 3 rings, when he had 2 rings, when he had 1 ring, and when he had 0 rings. All this is important to understand. It shows you that they're not being consistent. Next, Michael Jordan fans have a contradiction. They don't go by rings to rank things that are outside of the NBA. For example, they don't go by rings to rank TV programs. Another example, they don't go by rings to rank movies. Another example, they don't go by rings to rank songs. And there are more examples, but you get the point. That is a contradiction. Next, Michael Jordan fans have a contradiction. When it comes to all the franchises in a particular sport, they don't rank all the franchises in a particular sport by rings. That is a contradiction. Next, Michael Jordan fans have a contradiction. When it comes to any of the coaches in any particular sport, they don't rank all the coaches by rings. That is a contradiction. Next, Michael Jordan fans have a contradiction. When it comes to any other sport, they don't go by rings to rank players. That is a contradiction. And there are more examples, but you get the point. Next, even if you find a Michael Jordan fan who does any of these things, they're not as into it as they are with Michael Jordan. They're not as into it as they are when they go by rings to rank Michael Jordan as the number one NBA player of all time. Even if you find a Michael Jordan fan who does any of these things, they don't even rank all the things or all the players when it comes to rings. Next, no matter how many rings a player has, and no matter what his record is, Michael Jordan fans won't rank him as being just as good as Michael Jordan or being better than Michael Jordan. Next, if Michael Jordan fans are going to go by rings, they're going to open some doors to some strange things. Here are some examples in no particular order. For example, suppose an NBA star went to the finals one time and he won, so he is undefeated. And suppose he knew he could go to 3 more NBA finals. That means he at least has 1 ring, and whether he wins or loses, he will not have 6 rings. And it also means that he has a chance to no longer be undefeated. He may not want to go to more NBA finals because he can't win 6 anyway, but at least he can stay undefeated. Another example, suppose an NBA star went to the NBA finals 6 times, and he won all 6 times, and he is undefeated. Should that star want to go to another NBA Finals? Because he may not be undefeated anymore. Another example, suppose an NBA star went to the NBA Finals 7 times, and he won all 7 times, and he is undefeated. Should he want to go to another NBA Finals? Because he may not be undefeated anymore. Another example, suppose an NBA star went to the NBA Finals 11 times, and he won all 11. So he is undefeated. Should he want to go to another NBA Finals? Because if he does, he might lose, and then he is undefeated. Next, you know how sometimes they say that some NBA legends in the past did well because the past NBA sucked? Well, they also hold it against those players for losing in the past. But if the players in the past sucked, then how do those players lose? And if they hold it against those players for losing, that means those players did not suck. They have a contradiction. Next, Michael Jordan fans think winning the ring is the most important thing, but Michael Jordan fans say that Michael Jordan was the number 1 NBA player in the 1980s and that he should have won an MVP award every season. That is a contradiction. Michael Jordan did not win a ring every year in the 1990s, and he did not win an MVP award every year in the 1990s. And yet Michael Jordan fans say that he was the best NBA player in the 1990s, and that he should have won an MVP award every year in the 1990s. That is a contradiction. Michael Jordan did not win a ring in the 2000s, and he did not win an MVP award in the 2000s. And yet some Michael Jordan fans say that he was the best player when he played in the 2000s. That is a contradiction. Next, Michael Jordan fans claim that Larry Bird picked Michael Jordan as the number 1 NBA player of all time in 1986, but Michael Jordan did not win a ring that year, and Michael Jordan did not win the MVP award that year. And by the way, Larry Bird was the MVP that year. That is a contradiction. Next, when an NBA star loses, Michael Jordan fans say the star was not good or that the star was not good enough. But they do not do the same things with Michael Jordan. Next, use some common sense. Suppose 2 teams play each other, and each team has Michael Jordan, and they are the same Michael Jordan, and they both play the same. Just because one team beats another team doesn't mean one Michael Jordan has now become better than the other Michael Jordan. Next, use some common sense. Suppose 2 teams play each other, and the star on one team played really well, and the other star on the other team did not play as well, but that star's team won. That does not mean the star on the winning team was better than the star on the losing team. Next, suppose 2 teams play each other, and the star on each team played exactly the same way, and they had the same numbers. That does not mean the star on the winning team was better than the star on the losing team. Next, use some common sense. If one team beats another team, that does not make the star on the winning team a better player than the star on the losing team. So that means if a star wins a ring, that does not make him a better player than the star who did not win a ring. Next, use some more common sense. If one star has 1 more ring than another player, that does not make him a better player than the guy who has 1 less ring. Next, use some more common sense. If you played in the NBA and you were the best player in the league, or one of the best players in the league, and there was another star who was not as good as you, but he had 1 or more rings than you, would you think that that player was a better player than you? Next, by the logic of Michael Jordan fans, every team that won was because of the star, and every team that lost was because of the star. And every team that won was because the star did well or because the star did better than usual.
and every team that lost was because the star did not play well or did not play as well as they usually did. And every star that was on the team that won was better than every star that was on the team that lost. So by the logic of Michael Jordan fans, any NBA star that has at least one more ring than another NBA star is a better NBA star. And you know there are some guys who have at least one more ring than another guy, and Michael Jordan fans do not rank those guys as being better players. And you know they do not apply it to any NBA star that has one or more rings than Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan had NBA Finals where he did not play as well as he usually did, and the team still won. But Michael Jordan fans do not hold it against him. And also, the fact that his team would still win is proof that one guy does not win by himself. Next, Michael Jordan fans say that Michael Jordan is the #1 NBA player of all time, partly because he was the leader of the 6 rings. But they also say Phil Jackson is the #1 NBA coach of all time, partly because he was the leader of those 6 rings. But it cannot be both. If it is because of Michael Jordan, then it can't be because of Phil Jackson. If it is because of Phil Jackson, then it can't be because of Michael Jordan. If you are going to give it to one guy, there is more reason to give it to Phil Jackson. Michael Jordan did not win without Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson won without Michael Jordan. When Phil Jackson was with the Lakers, he had a similar staff and a similar type of team, but Michael Jordan did not win anywhere else. This is proof that it takes a team to win, and that one guy does not win. Next, what about Scottie Pippen? Scottie Pippen was on the same team. He went to the NBA Finals the same amount of times. He has the same amount of rings. He sacrificed his game more than Michael Jordan did to help the team win. He did some things better than Michael Jordan. He did more things better than Michael Jordan compared to Michael Jordan doing more things better than him. Michael Jordan did not start winning until he had Scottie Pippen. And when Michael Jordan left, the Chicago Bulls did fine. Scottie Pippen is a better team player than Michael Jordan. He is a better leader than Michael Jordan. He is taller than Michael Jordan. He is stronger than Michael Jordan. He is longer than Michael Jordan. He was more of an all-around player than Michael Jordan. And you could make the argument that he was a better player than Michael Jordan. So shouldn't Scottie Pippen be the #1 NBA player on the team? And shouldn't Scottie Pippen be the #1 NBA player of all time? They will say he is the #2 guy on the Chicago Bulls. How do they know this? There is no way to prove that. Teams do not always have a clear-cut #1 guy and #2 guy. And one guy does not win and lose, and it takes a team to win. You have different players, and the players have different roles. So how can there be a #1 guy and #2 guy? And if they act like there is a #1 guy and #2 guy, now they have to be consistent, and they have to be able to figure out who is the #1 guy and who is the #2 guy for every team that they know about. And they have to explain how come everyone won't agree with them when it comes to who they think is the #1 guy and #2 guy on all of those teams. Now, some Michael Jordan fans will say, well, Michael Jordan scored more points. That is a ridiculous point to use. If you want to know all the reasons why, I made a separate video on this. Some Michael Jordan fans will ignore all this, and they will say that Michael Jordan is the #1 guy, and Scottie Pippen is the #2 guy. So if you go by the logic of Michael Jordan fans, it is not that ridiculous to label Scottie Pippen as the #1 player on the team and the #1 NBA player of all time. They will say it is ridiculous. Well then, if Scottie Pippen is the #2 player on the team, then shouldn't he be the #2 NBA player of all time? But they don't rank him as the #2 NBA player of all time. But okay, maybe they have him #3. No. Maybe they have him #4. No. They don't even have him near the top. And not only that, but they do not even have him in the top 10 or the top 20. Some don't have him in the top 30. Some don't have him in the top 40. Some don't have him in the top 50. Some think he was overrated. Some do not think that he was that good. That is a contradiction. If they say Michael Jordan is the #1 NBA player of all time because he was the #1 guy on the team that won 6 rings, then by that logic, Scottie Pippen is the #2 NBA player of all time because he was the #2 guy on the team that won 6 rings. This also means that all the other Chicago Bulls who were helping the team win a ring should be ranked higher depending on how much they impacted the Chicago Bulls and how many rings they have. Next, you know how Michael Jordan fans say that nothing else matters but winning a ring? You know how they say statistics don't matter if the player does not win the ring? Well, Scottie Pippen sacrificed his game to help the team win. But Michael Jordan fans point the finger at Scottie Pippen's numbers. They hold it against him for sacrificing his game. And they don't just do this with Scottie Pippen. They do this with lots of other NBA players as well. That is a contradiction. Next, if winning a ring is the most important thing, then shouldn't going to the NBA Finals also be important? or at least be the next most important thing? And how would you be able to figure out who is better if you go by winning a ring and going to the NBA Finals? For example, what if one guy won 4 rings and went to the NBA Finals 4 times, and another guy won 1 ring, but he went to the NBA Finals 8 times? Now, some of them will say that they would not count going to the NBA Finals. Well, would they ever count it? What if a guy went to the NBA Finals 20 times? What if a guy went to the NBA Finals 70 times? What if a guy went to the NBA Finals 100 times? And then why stop with winning the NBA Finals and going to the NBA Finals? What about the third round? What about the second round? What about the first round? What about the regular season games? What about the All-Star games? What about the preseason? What about college? What about high school? What if a player played more than one professional sport and won a lot in another sport? What if a person is also an actor and won lots of awards as an actor? And what if the player did something else and won some awards in that thing? I mean, how far does this go? Next, Michael Jordan fans are ignoring common sense. No matter how a star plays, the team might win and the team might lose. Next, if a player tries to win and he does not give up and he has the statistics to show that he did well and all these things, why should he get the blame for losing? And what is he supposed to do to help the team win? You have people who put up monster numbers and they lost. What else do you expect them to do? And you really can't understand that the loss is not because of them? Next, how is someone else supposed to win the NBA Finals if his team is not good enough to win the NBA Finals, or get to the NBA Finals, or win in the third round, or win in the second round, or win in the first round, or get into the playoffs, or if they had questionable coaching, or if the team had injuries, or if there was some questionable refereeing, or something? Next, Michael Jordan fans usually do not go by rings when they rank the number 2 NBA player of all time, the number 3 NBA player of all time, the number 4 NBA player of all time, and so on. That is a contradiction. Next, how is Michael Jordan supposed to lose the NBA Finals if he does not get to the NBA Finals? Or if he does not get to the third round? Or if he does not get to the second round? Or if he does not get to the first round? Or if he does not make the playoffs? Next, there are other players who have just as good of a record as Michael Jordan or a better record than Michael Jordan. Next, Michael Jordan has more losses than he does wins. Michael Jordan lost a bunch of times. Michael Jordan fans are not even going by all his losses. They are just going by the NBA Finals. They are acting like he just played 6 seasons. They are just going by the 4th round. They are ignoring everything else. Next, Michael Jordan himself has given credit to his coaching staff and his team for winning, and he has made the point that he wouldn't have won without those guys. And he was waiting for guys like that to help him win, and he wants them also to get the credit. Next, Michael Jordan has basically explained that you should not use rings to rank guys. Next, Michael Jordan has basically explained that just because one guy has 1 or more rings than another guy, it does not mean that he is a better player. Next, Michael Jordan has basically made the point that there is no such thing as the number 1 NBA player of all time. Next, there are other players who have 6 or more rings. Next, one guy does not win a ring. Some Michael Jordan fans will say, well, hey, one guy leads the way. Well, one guy will probably not lead the way to win if their team is not good enough to win. Hey, please subscribe, and if you disagree with me on something, you can go on my program and show me your facts on whatever you disagree on. If you want to go on, let's set it up. Send me an email. The email is right there in the description section. Thank you.